Hello everyone, welcome back. Tonight we have a very special moderator for this Q&A, Mr. FX Feeney.
Thank you so much. Pretty trippy after being in such a wonderful film, but won't you join me in welcoming the director, Steve Mitchell, and the one and only Larry Cohen. Hey guys. Oh, come on up, Larry. Well,
Nicest thing he's ever done to me.
yeah, here we go. There's a
Take this.
A microphone? You got
microphones and
Well, what a smear job, huh? You know how he can take the various coverage and cut it in a certain way, slant it, you know what I mean? Out of context. Well, I forgive you.
All right, thank you.
You did a nice job of trying to make people like me.
What do you guys think?
yeah, hey, come on. Yeah,
That's all right. What can you do? I still got a few more movies ahead of me. I'll try and have a comeback or something.
well, listen, that's actually part of the double inspiration of this movie because, on the one hand, you know, Steve, you create an image of an era that's, you know, encapsulated. I mean, it's a particular era of a certain kind of, like Scorsese calls it the renegade era of movies. But see, what's great is right now everybody's worried about the changing platform, but this guy's a one-man changing platform because basically, Larry, you started in television, you move over to movies, you can, you know, either write or direct or what have you, so you're still thriving. And so I think it's a double inspiration. On the one hand, we do get a whole era in looking at the various terrific films you did.
I just had a musical play, which I wrote with the Sherman Brothers, the guys who wrote Mary Poppins. We've been playing that for the last couple of weeks out here at the LA City College, and tonight was the last two performances. So we're hoping that'll go to Broadway. By the time I got into the theater, I've done a couple of plays that were left out of the documentary. Yeah, he left out my whole career in theater. Yes.
It's too big a career for one.
That's another movie.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's also because the plays have to be performed, you know, and what happens is, but I see in the great dialogue in movie after movie, and it doesn't matter whether it's J. Edgar Hoover or Q or Bone, you know, the playwright in you is still kicking. I mean, that's very much visible, you know, as part of it.
Well, I get involved in the story I'm writing, and the dialogue just comes. It's just characters take over, start talking, and I'm the stenographer. I just write it down. That's really what happens, and I don't usually have an outline. I don't usually know what's going to happen next. So I'm anxious to get back to work so I can find out what's going to happen to these characters and where this story is going to go. But, you know, if you work in television or in high-budget films, executives always want to know everything before you start. So then it takes all the magic out of it because you know the whole story, you know where it's going, and it doesn't have that mystique that it has when you're making it up as you go along.
Now, that actually brings to mind actually a question about the making of this film, because Steve, I'm wondering, you know, it catches Larry's spirit in such a way that I'm guessing that perhaps you didn't know where you were going when you started out on this adventure. I just talk a little about carpentering this thing.
I knew Larry's career. I was a fan of the work, and I hoped that he would be as interesting as his movies. Lucky for me, he was. And, you know, listen, when you're making any kind of movie, fiction or nonfiction, it's all about interesting characters. And Larry's a pretty interesting guy. So what we sort of found as we were cutting the movie, we let Larry and his work dictate where the movie was going. But there were moments where we had so much good stuff, by the way. I think I got about close to 20 hours of interview footage with Larry. So you go, what do I use? What don't I use? So it was a wealth of riches. By the way, this guy, you want to interview this guy when you do an entertainment documentary. He gave me so much good stuff, it was ridiculous. But, you know, you have to sort of find your way through these things. You know, they don't always present, you know, the narrative right away. You have to find the narrative in a documentary.
Well, it is a very interesting aspect of it. I mean, if you try and choose Larry's movies individually, if you run into them by chance over the years, and it often happens to people, you don't realize the same guys behind them. And then when you see them all together, right, lumped together in the film, well, clearly the same crazy guys behind these.
Well, like Landis said,
Yeah.
you see the movie, all of the movies together, you get an idea what the filmmaker is like. We don't have a lot of that today, and that was one of the things we wanted to celebrate with the picture.
Yeah. And the other nice thing is that everybody's talking about the same guy in this movie. Everybody's completing each other's sentences as diverse as the movies are.
Yeah, editing.
You know,
It's a
somebody
cool thing.
somebody said something to me in the lobby. Where do you get to see these movies of yours? Where are they playing? And so they don't know that these pictures are available on Netflix. All you got to do is say my name aloud, and then my picture comes up, and there's a little arrow, and then the 14 of my movies come up, and then you're horrified to see they want $3.95 to see them. I guess that's the end of it. But you know, for a lousy $4, you can see any of these pictures. Or you can stay up all night tonight and see two of them.
Was there anybody that you were reaching out to that was hard to get to, hard to land in terms of making this picture?
Michael Moriarty was a little tough to find. He has no representation, and we're going, we can't make a movie about Larry without Moriarty. And then literally because of Facebook, I saw an article about Moriarty on Cinema Retro, which is a great magazine, wrote something about the fact that Moriarty is political and he writes for a political blog. So I sent an email to the editor of the blog, and I said, could you connect me? And 24 hours later, I was sitting cutting the movie with my editor, Kai, and the phone rang, and I looked at it, and I'm not going to tell you what city it is, but it was in Canada. And I said to him, I said, holy shit, that might be Moriarty. And I pick up the phone, I say, hi, this is Steve, and he goes, hello, Steve, Michael Moriarty, how are you? I said, thrilled to find you. And he was a big get for us.
That's great.
He came up in Montreal when we ran the picture at the Montreal Film Festival, and he appeared with me 2 nights on stage. We had an awful lot of fun knocking it around and making fun, and he told me he was not going to work anymore, that he retired. And I said to him, you know, Michael, remember that autograph you signed for that lady yesterday afternoon? Well, that was a contract. You're in for 2 more pictures.
They'd be great together again. They have such great chemistry.
Well, you know, it's also interesting that either in the renegade format of Q and the Stuff, or you know, when you're dealing with phone booth, you know, there's always a sense with you of immediacy, Larry, of looking at the times, seeing and people feel that they're, you know, a little bit clairvoyant, these movies, because they're about what's also about to break. And I'm very curious about your take on the contemporary world. Is there anything that's particularly turning you on creatively about what you're witnessing, you know, in this 3-ring circus of a news cycle we seem to live in?
Well, a lot of my movies have become more apropos in today's world than they were when I made them, actually. There's so much stuff about the FBI now and the president and all that stuff. You know?
Yeah.
You'll see a lot of that examined in the J. Edgar Hoover movie, and the stuff I couldn't put in there that was way ahead of its time. We did mention that Deep Throat and the information that brought down Nixon came from the FBI, and that's what happened after 30-some years. Mark Felt was revealed as the Deep Throat, and he was the acting director of the FBI at the time. So it was everything I had in the movie, but the press refused to acknowledge it. They didn't want to examine it. They didn't want to know about it.
Yeah.
After all, if the information came from the FBI, and Woodward and Bernstein would never have gotten a Pulitzer Prize. Would never have happened. So there you are.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, if you look at the Watergate situation, Nixon would never have been removed if Spiro Agnew was vice president. They hated him worse than Nixon. If they had removed Nixon, Spiro Agnew would have become president. They couldn't allow that to happen. So Spiro Agnew was removed from office by the FBI, the same people. Mark Felt, who gave the information to the prosecutors that pulled Spiro Agnew out of the White House as vice president. First they destroyed him, then they could be free to go after Nixon. None of the press, no one has ever gone after that end of the story. They don't want to know it. But that's what happened.
What's interesting, and it's brought up a bit in the film, I want to touch on it as a question, is if when you were dealing with Hoover as a protagonist with Broderick Crawford, right? You create in that film an unexpected empathy for the guy, and I liked very much something you said about, in Washington they're all corrupt on all sides. You're willing to just sort of take individuals as they come, and I just wonder if you could talk a little about that, even like looking at the contemporary situation, just what you see when you're looking at the various players on the stage right now.
They're all bad guys. There's no good guys. They're all bad. I mean, come on. You talk about obstruction of justice. Obstruction of justice. Come on. That's ridiculous. The word about an attorney general who might be too close to the president. Well, didn't Kennedy appoint his brother as attorney general? How could you be closer? And Bobby Kennedy blackmailed everybody by auditing their income tax returns at the time. They were terrible people. Talk about all the sexual stuff today. I hate to say President Kennedy was a serial rapist. When I was in Washington, D.C., when I was in the Army, every time I went in, I told anybody I was in the movie business, all they wanted to know was, am I aware of this actress or that actress? Because that week she was sleeping with President Kennedy, and everybody knew it. And some women told me, oh, if we ever have President Kennedy or Senator Kennedy at the time to our house for a vacation, and there's any women in the house, they're right away advised to lock their bedroom door, otherwise they'll wake up in the middle of the night and Jack Kennedy will be in bed with them. This was his technique, and he got it from his father. And his father was famous for doing that, getting into bed with women in the middle of the night. So, I mean, there's so much that's going on over the years. There's so much corruption, but and it's probably never going to change.
Right. And Steve, what was the biggest surprise for you? Was it, you'd known Larry for a while before making the picture. Was there anything that took you aback when you were, recreating his life and going into stuff with it?
God, I was surprised constantly by Larry all the time. I mean, I knew his work. I was a fan. I knew his name from TV shows. I was a big fan. I was a kid when The Invaders was on. And I knew Cohen.
You have to say that.
Well, sorry, the truth hurt. Well, it hurts me too.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I had an idea who this guy might be, but I never really knew who he was going back. And it started with him answering the phone. When he picked up the phone, and I said, I want to do this. He said, come up to the house. So I went up to the house.
Never should have answered.
Well, live and learn, right?
This is what can happen. All I said was, whoa.
Here we are.
The famous house, which is, it's weird to go to that set, because that house has been in virtually all your movies, right?
I tried always to shoot one scene at least in the house. Oh, good luck.
That's great.
Just for fun.
I wanted to see if, put my lid down here so I can see hands, but I'd like to invite, are there any questions from the audience? Anybody have a question for Larry or Steve?
I charge $5. Answer the question. I'm trying. By the way, everybody here
Yes.
seemed to like the movie. If everybody here would just give me $10,000, I could make another.
Yeah, crowdsource.
Crowdfunding.
Yeah. We have a question here. Your hand is up there, ma'am.
Did you realize when you made It's Alive that us who are attached to universities would have such a difficult time that we would have 25% of our medical students who no longer wanted to go into obstetrics and gynecology?
Did you know, I'll repeat the question back, did you know when you were making It's Alive that as now 25% of medical students do not want to go into obstetrics and gynecology at that time?
Because of that picture?
Because of that?
Yeah.
Well, good for them.
And your question, sir, behind it, or do I'm sorry, no, was there a question back there in back of this lady? Sorry. Okay, well, yes, yours, sorry, yes. Yeah?
Okay, this is for Mr. Cohen. I enjoy your irreverent Jewish sense of humor. What's your
I
Okay.
didn't see it. I saw the previous one, which was on Broadway first.
Bryan Cranston.
Bryan Cranston, I saw that, and then I saw it, the movie. I enjoyed the movie and his performance, but it was full of inaccuracies.
Okay, what's your opinion on LBJ?
What's your opinion of just LBJ the man, right? As-
Well, LBJ, he got some very good bills through Congress after he became president, but he did lie about what happened in the Gulf of Tonkin and get us right into the middle of the Vietnam War. And that was a terrible thing to do because it cost millions of lives. And that's a terrible crime. And you talk about prosecuting somebody, he should have been put on trial for that because that didn't happen. There was no attack on the ship. They made it up. They got us into a war. They killed a lot of people. And that's a horrible thing to say, but it's true, unfortunately. And what can you say? He might have done some good things, but nothing compared to what was done. And by the way, talk about interfering in elections. That's the whole basis of the Vietnam War. They had an election. They voted communist. President Kennedy couldn't stand that to happen, so he decided to send troops in to void their election. So we interfered with somebody's election and killed millions of them. So when everybody's talking about the Russians interfering in our election, we've been interfering in elections all through South America for years. Everybody knows it. It's such hypocrisy. Well, anyway, that's my opinion.
That's good. Yes. We have a question here. Sir in the front row.
Yeah, hi, Larry, Jesse Torero. I have a question. In the documentary, they talk about your genius attitude and how you get creative ideas your whole life since you were a child, and how guerrilla marketing and guerrilla shooting was really something that you perfected. With today's technology, a lot of the young filmmakers out there, do you see that type of filmmaking coming back, especially with the use of today's technology?
Let me repeat the question real quickly. It's about, you are the master of guerrilla filmmaking in the realm of this film, but now with the new technology and the inexpensive stuff, do you see a revival of that for the young filmmakers coming along?
Well, you can't do the same thing anymore. There's too much security. You try to do the same thing and run through the streets with guns, you'll be arrested or maybe shot. You can't take chances anymore. The police go crazy. They kill people at the slightest drop of a hat. You don't want to fool around like that, and you don't want to be climbing on buildings firing off machine guns. We climbed on the top of the Sony sign on Times Square, all the way up on this little flimsy ladder with Fred Williamson with a telescopic rifle. And we were perched up there over Times Square. Now, today, they fly over there with a helicopter patrol with snipers. I guess Fred Williamson wouldn't have been correcting me in this film. That would have been the end of Fred Williamson's commentary. By the way, if you saw in the picture where he's buried in the coal, when there's a machine that buries him in a pile of coal, and you saw a photograph somewhat later of me standing next to him, I was black as could be. I was colored with the coal dust because I went in there before him. And you could see that I was, because I was standing there and I was almost as black as he was. And so the man lied.
Now, in terms of, this is the other inspiring thing, because as I was saying earlier, you begin in television before you move over to film, and now everybody's talking changing platforms, this and that, because the old era of the run in the movie house and so forth, it seems to be a whole different era, but the changing platforms are TV. You've got quality TV, HBO, Showtime, Stars, all these sort of venues, and it seems to me that a lot of the crazier, wilder ideas that you had in the early 60s for television now might actually find a roosting place. I'm wondering, where are you looking at that venue now for your next movie?
I'm working with J.J. Abrams' company, Bad Robot, about doing a series of movies, mini movies for cable, and we're working on it right now. So I hope it happens. After I went and had that lunch with J.J., as you saw in the movie, we got to be friends, and he said to me, "Why don't you do a series with me?" So we're trying to get it on now. If anybody can get it on, it should be JJ. But we'll see what happens. I've written, I hate to tell you this, it sounds idiotic. I've written 17 scripts already for the damn thing. It only takes me a few days to write one, and I've got 17 of them, so that's almost 2 seasons worth of scripts all written. So we'll see what happens. And he should never have given me any encouragement. Because I went home and started writing, and then before I knew it, I'd written all those scripts. And they're good, too.
Well, speaking of encouragement, I wonder, because you are bonding with JJ, and there's a lot of young filmmakers, I'm sure, in the audience. I mean, when people come to you for advice about what to do or how to make their own work happen, what do you tell them? What's the most important advice?
Oh, the young film, I tell them to get out of the business. I don't need any more competition. All these young people who went to film school and the writers who took, what's his name's course?
Sid Field and all
No, the other guy, yeah.
Bob McKee.
Yeah, McKee, who never sold a script in his entire life. He's a man charging people hundreds and hundreds of dollars to tell them how good Casablanca is. Amazing. And if you look at Casablanca, how many of you have seen Casablanca? The whole picture is about, you have to get these letters of transport to get out of Casablanca, right? Isn't that what the whole picture is?
Right.
And who's going to carry them to the airport? Yet when they get to the airport in the last scene in the picture, there's absolutely no security. There's nobody there. Nobody there. Claude Rains arrives with Bogart, and the German shows up alone, the German commandant. They shoot him. Nobody comes when he gets shot. There's no guards around. There's no people around. Ingrid Bergman and Henry get on the plane. Nobody stops them and asks them for any papers. He just says, "So long, kid," and they take off. That's it. The whole picture makes absolutely no sense. What can I tell you? Except that it's one of the greatest movies of all time. You know why? Because of the casting. The casting, that's what did it. The actors. And Michael Curtiz kept the damn thing moving. Here's a movie that all takes place in one locale, inside Rick's Cafe. That's the only place it goes. There's no car chases. There's no fights. There's no action. It's all talk inside Rick's Cafe. Try and sell a script like that nowadays. Impossible. So anyway.
Yeah.
So the hell with Robert McKee's course. I might start teaching classes pretty soon. Anybody here want to take a class?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, everybody, give me $100. We can stay here all night. By morning, you'll know everything you need to know about making movies. You don't have to look at these pictures they're going to put on here. We'll cancel them.
Well, there's no competition for you. I got to tell you, as great as some young characters out there are, there's no competition for you, Larry. And this film has created such a wonderful portrait of you. I just want to thank you, Steve.
This picture's going to cause you a lot of trouble. Steve, I do thank you very much.
No, thank
I
you
do thank you.
for answering the phone.
Yeah, well, it won't happen again.
So, and hey, you guys, thank you so much.
Thanks for coming, everybody.